Good morning, my name is Kirsty Dignam and I'm here to look at the energies this week with today's Monday's Musings on the 14th of October 2024. I nearly said 2025 then, and I'm finding myself needing to pace. There's an inner temptation to rush ahead this week, born from being in situations we may not like the look or sound of. There's a lot to be unravelled. We may feel as if we know what's coming based on previous experiences. What's really important this week is to take time to allow things to unravel, ourselves included, perhaps to an extent as well. To recognise the trust that we need to reform back within what we feel and our own potential. There's been a lot that has been limited over the last, I was going to say 4 years, but I'm very aware of everything astrologically, so about 15 years, but definitely the last 4 years. A lot that has had the potential to expand or restrict us, that may not quite have panned out how we would have expected, that may not have reached its potential. And this week we're going to be shown that. When I tuned into the energies for the video, I had a usual wobble, actually. Contrary to popular belief, I'm aware I turn up on the camera and seem to know what I'm talking about, but every session I don't, and there's always a pause. There's always a pause based on making a cup of tea and normal life, and then an influx of energy that comes in to be spoken about. And sometimes that pause can be really quick. Sometimes it can be to the point where I think, oh, I better get upstairs because there's information coming in. Sometimes I've been very tempted to grab a notepad and pen because it's trying to come in that clearly and that quickly. And other times, like this morning, that pause is longer than I would have anticipated. And I still, to this day, after decades of doing this, get caught up in trying to speed that up based on a belief that something may not come. What if I suddenly cannot connect? What if the answers aren't there? What if I turn on the camera and nothing comes through? This week we're being really encouraged to feel into our what ifs and how true they may be. Never, touch wood, and there's a lot of superstition there as well, but never have I not had something come in. Never have I not found the answers I've asked for. They may not have always been in the way that I would like or expect, but that's the opportunity this week to really expand that. And as we do so, expand our vision, not only externally, but of ourselves. The other thing that came through today were the cards I'm going to use. I'm going to use the Wildwood Tarot, and it's the newer version. I have the original version as well, but it's the newer version of the Wildwood Tarot. And they're so different from other cards. And again, there's a bit of a wobble there, you know. Even the order of the Strength card and the Justice card are different. And feeling into that today, it's not about what we know. Yeah, it's about what we can see in front of us now. And that's really difficult. That's really difficult. And we're being asked to fine tune that, to sift through just how much what we see and how we see something is being affected by our past experiences this week, and not just our own. The other thing I felt into when I embraced this wobble, which is key, you know, the more we can embrace it, the more we can learn from it. We're going to have several options this week to feel into what's going on or ignore it. And by feeling into it, I mean, it's all choice, always. But by feeling into it, you may be surprised at the answers if you can do so without judgment. You know, of course, this morning it was, oh shit, it's one of those mornings, nothing's going to come through. But when I felt into that, already something's coming through based on how I see my own connection. So it's all about self-awareness. Okay, whether it's the tarot, whether it's healing, whether it's any answers that we seek, there's no good seeking answers if we're not aware enough to know what they mean. This is our greatest tool. Our awareness of our body is our greatest tool. And this week we're going to be really shown where we could be expanding on that, where we could really be expanding on that, where we've been underestimated collectively, but also personally by ourselves. And that does bring forth a bit of a headache, because there's almost like new cogs whirring in the brain. There's a rewiring of the brain. You know, up until a few years ago, it was firmly believed that the brain couldn't change, that the brain cells would die and nothing would change. But actually, we've discovered neuroplasticity of the brain, so the brain can be molded and changed and rewired. Every part of us can. You know, there's a theory that the body regenerates itself within 7 years, every organ, everything within it. So why do things not change? The hard drive needs to be changed. And this week, that's what we're being faced with. But it's not only our own hard drive, thank you. I sat and felt into the wobble earlier and looked outside. And as I looked outside, I saw the last remaining red leaves on a tree by my window. And all I kept hearing was, don't forget your bloodline. Don't forget the blood that runs through you. And that's really going to be key this week, particularly as we're leading into the more ancestral times of Halloween and Day of the Dead, those kind of energies with the veil lifting. We are going to be aware of ancestral memories, but also ancestral gifts. We talk about ancestral healing a lot as if it's something that we want to shift, release, get rid of. And again, it's that healing energy, that belief of removal that almost needs to be shifted. What gains are there behind our ancestral lineage this week? Can we expand the view we have of ourselves and of our ancestors, both been and to come? If we believe only certain things are possible, then we're almost writing the narrative for the future generation. One, without their permission, and two, from a restricted perspective. So this week, it can be difficult. It really can be difficult to open our heart to potential that we may not be able to see. It really can be difficult to expand our vision, to expand our energy, to hope. Yes, to hope. However, in doing so, we are leaving the pages for the future generation more blank for them to fill in the gaps, so that we don't project. That's one of the energies this week, projection of our own stuff, not only onto other people, but our own potential as well. So with that in mind, for me to include any more will be about my story, and that's going to be key this week. Recognize where your story begins and where another's starts, and just being aware of how they merge, but also being aware of the impact of your story onto others. With that in mind, stepping back from my story, let's feel into the energies collectively and see what's going on this week in how we navigate them. Okay, because that is what it comes down to. It really doesn't matter what insight you gain, what answers you get, who you go to for them, where you get them from. What matters is the impact that they have on you, whether that's the news that you watch, this video, a blog that you may read, something that you've seen on YouTube. What is the impact that it has on you? So in this deck, the one difference is that strength and justice have changed places, that the strength card is the number 11, okay, that the strength comes from looking at how we are impacted by our reflections, by what is going on around us. So we don't have control of everything outside, but we do have control over our own reactions. And this week, that's really going to be key. We can decide the stories that we choose to take forward from our ancestors and from our environment. It doesn't feel like it's an opportunity to polish what we already know. It feels like that can be quite comfortable. It feels like there's a great potential here to seek beyond, to be more comfortable with what we know, but to work with that comfort, to have balance in uncertainty. Okay, energies this week and how to best navigate them. Don't get caught in the heavier vibrations that are out there. That's not to say ignore them, or to not be aware or woke, or whatever word you want to use, whatever language you want to use. Let me just turn off notifications. It's more keep coming back to the self. And part of me feels quite tired that it feels like that's all I say, but that is all that's relevant. Keep coming back to yourself. Keep coming back to those repetitive insights and messages that your body tells you. You know, you may find yourself in situations that don't feel comfortable, and you can see it from one perspective, another perspective, you can learn from it, but ultimately underneath it doesn't feel comfortable. And this week we're being given the opportunity to complete the circle. You know, you may find that you go back to beliefs that you've always had about situations, and it's not about, oh, I knew that. It kind of is, but it isn't. It's about humbly taking on that information and moving forward. Of course, you can make a song and dance with it as much as you like to, but the more you know what's right for you, the more you're able to just move into that situation without the circus. That's what I hear, without the circus. Okay, the ruckus. Transition is a beautiful, smooth, easy place, and so is change. It's only when we feel we have to get points across, or we have to defend what has happened, or we're uncertain of what we're doing, that it becomes difficult. Okay. Not uncertain with what we're doing, uncertain with who we are, that it becomes difficult. A lot can happen around us. The more we have strength in our inner core, it's not that it affects us less. Of course it doesn't. It affects us just as much, but we can keep coming back to a stronger, more aligned energy of who we are and do what we came here to do. And that's really key this week. And for a lot of people, myself included, apparently, we have no idea what that is. We have an inkling, a beginning, but there is so much more. And that's not from a place of not being enough. That's from a place of really not seeing our worth and our potential. Okay, our value. Right, energies this week and how to best navigate them. So 6 of Cups at the bottom of the pack, and in this pack it's called reunion. And yes, that can be reunion of relationships. That can be on the forerunner of a lot of our ideas, relationships with jobs, relationships with each other, but more importantly, a reunion to the land. A reunion to the connection that we have to the land. I think it's Indigenous Day today. I'm not 100% sure, and I apologise if that isn't quite the case, but regardless of the day, regardless, you know, we get very caught up in full moons and portals and celebrations, and much as they're a beautiful time to have rites of passage and to honour our ancestors, what happens to the rest of the year? What happens to our connection with the land the rest of the year, or the connection to ourselves the rest of the year? Often it takes a bit of a drama before we realise how disconnected we've become. For that flow to happen, it needs to be a constant reunion, a constant returning to who we are, a constant recognition of our own reflection here in the waters of life, and the importance of that balance emotionally. Okay, so overall the 6 of Vessels here, coming back home to who we are. That's what this week is all about, regardless of how it does it. Monday, oh, okay, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There is 2, much as I may not want there to be, there is 2. Sunday, overall. Okay, so Saturday, being mindful that we may want to make it just about the one thing, the one energy, but it is about 2 energies, 2 people, 2 situations, 2 choices even. Overall, we have the 5 of Stones. Overall, we have endurance. So if I show you again that 6 of Vessels card here, in the land, you have a bit of a cave that you can go into. Okay, overall, the energy is the 5 of Stones. Do we need those hardships in order to return? Is that, and I'm just putting it out there for you perhaps to reflect on as an invitation, is that an old way of doing things? Do we need the wound to come up before we find the medicine, or can we have the medicine already there? And perhaps, what's the word, you know, when Eastern medicine is more about, it's not about waiting until we get poorly. It's not waiting until there's a dire situation. It's not about waiting until there's no other option, because that can almost instill the victim mentality of the 5 of Pentacles. It's about recognizing the storm and The word has gone out of my mind. I want to say preconceptional care, and obviously it isn't, but it is about recognizing we do know to an extent some of the things that are coming, and we can prepare for that. The word has escaped me. We don't have to wait for the drama, okay, for steps to be made, and there are different ways of doing that. That's more of a inherited way of doing things, that things happen to us, when actually if we listen out to the language that is going on around us, and particularly with our emotions this week and our physical body, we're going to sense into where things may not feel right. We're going to sense into where there's an opportunity to expand beyond what we've always done. Whether we act on that or not is going to be an individual choice, but the choice will actually come as a result of, or lead to the result of, I made this decision rather than this happened to me. Monday, today we have the Death card, and it's about recognizing endings, as you can see in this card, as part of the journey. An opportunity to pick at what worked, to see whether or not it sustains us, and then eventually, when there's nothing left, fly off, not forgetting to move on. On the Monday, the opportunity there is to remember that the Death card is about moving on. It is about change. It is about freedom. Whatever is coming to light on the Monday may be uncomfortable. It may not quite be how we would have liked things, but it is an opportunity to see what no longer serves us and to move forward towards greater expansion. And you can see here the full moon is in the background, so I haven't looked at the cards yet, but from now I should imagine until the full moon on Thursday on the 17th, there's going to be opportunities to release what no longer serves us, so that we can embrace change for what it is, change. Okay, so we can get really caught up in getting a new haircut and boom, there you go, my life has changed. And I'm not saying that that's not an important transition, but this week it isn't about, I can hear the phrase, you can polish a turd. It isn't about polishing or covering up what is going on, but bringing in something completely different. It's not about upgrading old versions of ourselves. It's about really moving forward from what no longer serves us now. And on the Tuesday, if we're not quite sure what that is, that's going to be made more apparent because we have the Three of Swords here. Now, this comes with the energy of jealousy. Recognizing when we're jealous of something, when we're envious of something, it's because we deep down inside attain to that. Deep down inside, we would like a part of that. I get incredibly jealous of people that are successful. I'm putting it out there. I have no shame with that because understandably, my heart is on fire for that success, whatever that means to me. It isn't necessarily financial success, but it's, yeah, figuring out what it is underneath the jealousy this week that you may feel that is actually the burning desire of your heart. Fine tune it rather than, oh, I shouldn't feel jealous. Feel jealous, feel heartbroken, feel expansive, feel these things. Listen to the voice of the heart, because underneath it all, it's calling, it's burning for something beyond what you have. With the Death card beforehand, it is saying, okay, that was then. I really want to move forward now, but not separating from the truth of our heart, because that can make us quite bitter. That can make us feel quite held back or stuck, or as if nothing is changing, particularly on the Tuesday. Now, on the Wednesday, we have the High Priestess, second major arcana of the week. We have the High Priestess, and it's about being able to see what actually has changed. When we take that emotional energy from the endings that bring us an open heart, when something ends, yeah, the heart, we can call the heart breaking, or we can call the heart opening. When something comes to a completion, it allows the heart to open, to release what it doesn't need anymore, so that it can see what it does. And the way that it does that on the Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, is to see through our own reflection, our emotional reflection. And you can see our hand is pointing down to the land, to connect to the earth, to ground into what we feel, to not get distracted by what's in front of us. You can see her eyes there are closed. I don't know if you can see. Her eyes are actually closed. To not get distracted by what's in front of us, but to trust our own intuitive wisdom here. On the Monday and the Tuesday, yes, it may feel as if things are ending. It may feel as if it wasn't quite as we had planned. It may feel as if, you know, Pluto going from Capricorn into Aquarius over the next few weeks, it may feel as if things are out of our control. But actually, intuitively, there's a sense of always knowing it was going to be this way. And when we can do that, that Five of Stones, rather than it be endurance, it can be, okay, there's a storm coming. There's things I need to prepare for. How is this helping me to do that? On the Thursday with the full moon in Aries, we have the Ace of Arrows, the breath of life. Now this is on top of Dragon Hill, and the reason I share this is I must go here. It's one of the, I think it's the Uffington horse on top of Dragon Hill, and it's about seeing through the eyes of the horse, or seeing through the eyes of the heart, seeing through the eyes of the dragon, or seeing through the eyes of the earth. If we could see ourselves through the eyes of the earth, of Pachamama, of our greatest potential, how would that change our mentality towards whatever it is we are facing? Thursday, that's the opportunity we're being given with the full moon. How can we see things differently? Not our external environment, by looking at how we see ourselves. If we see ourselves, those Five of Stones, from not having a choice, from being controlled by the powers that be, whatever they may be, yeah, if we see ourselves that way, that new idea is never really going to be new, it's always going to be limited. If we see ourselves from a place of expansiveness and our fullest potential, even that is going to be limited, because we only know what we know. So come the Thursday, allowing ourselves to be open with curiosity, allowing ourselves to see ourselves through the eyes of something completely different now. On the Friday, yes, that's going to bring in change. That's the third major arcana this week, which is the Tower. That is going to bring in change. And there's a lot here going on with the trees, so be mindful of that. It feels ancestral as well. Some of the beliefs that we have about ourselves and that we have about the world and our roles within the world, not some, all of them are actually inherited. You know, we either do what is expected of us ancestrally, or we do what isn't expected of us ancestrally. Either way, it still kind of molds our path. And that can be quite a bitter pill to swallow, particularly on the Friday, as we realize that much as we want to be free from these situations, the only way to be free is to either take on board the wound or take on board the medicine. So we can say, okay, so uncle so and so and so and so did this, this and this, so I'm going to be exactly the same, or I'm going to be exactly different. But either way, we have to realize that to an extent our life has already been formed by those that walk before us. That's going to free us from the tree, that's going to free us from our ancestry, because we can say that was also their version of it. This is how I choose to take that forward now. We cannot escape what makes us us. There may be things that we don't like about ourselves this week that comes up, but it isn't about trying to outrun that. It's about taking it and running with it, particularly on the Friday. And it's that that's going to bring the change, because for many, come Friday, it's going to feel as if we've tried to shift things and nothing has actually shifted. So what haven't we faced on the Friday? That's going to come to light, and that's going to bring forth the shifts that we want. And yes, it may feel as if the rug has been taken from underneath us. It may feel as if the very earth is cracking underneath us. And there are big, big changes with the earth, particularly on the Friday, and with storms as well. However, the situation couldn't have continued. We've had insight on that from the Monday. Tuesday, that's brought forth a bit of a heart longing and a bit of inner reflection on the Wednesday. Thursday, that brings forth a new opportunity to see things for what they can bring. And on the Friday, that is going to be the change that we can take forward. On the Saturday, there are two options to consider. And we have the Hierophant, or the Ancestor. Well, there you go. And the Ace of Bows, or the Spark of Life, the Ace of Wands here. Now, seeing our creative spirit from a new perspective, bringing forth the ancestors, looking at how they may have seen our situation. How would they have prepared for what is going on? What can we bring forward now? What lessons have we gained? What lessons have we been gifted, but not necessarily seen them as gifts? On the Saturday, really feeling into that, because it's that that's going to help us take aim for what it is we want. I'm trying to give an example, and it feels quite important to find our own at the weekend, to find our own way of seeing that has gone before us, to, as we would allow our future generation to do, to allow them to find their own wisdom at the weekend. It can be really tempting, particularly if we see things that have been ending for people, or if we see people we love in pain, or if we know intuitively the best, what we think is the best road forward for them throughout the week. It can be really tempting to bring in that change based on how we choose to see things. However, a lot of the wisdom, all of the wisdom we gain is by experience. Allowing that for others, expecting that for yourself as well. You may think, oh, I do that because that's how it's always been done. That's how my mother did it, my father did it, or I don't do that because that's how they did that. Okay, but what would you like to do? What would you like to do without making it about anyone else? What would you like to do? What do you need to figure out for yourself? And allowing other people that as well. Because on the Sunday we then have the hawk, or the Knight of Arrows, and the hawk is part of the eagle family, and it's about seeing the bigger picture. I meant to say perspective and picture all in one go. Excuse me. Recognizing it is about the picture and not the perspective. Recognizing that it's all right to see the bigger perspective of everything, but how does that affect your individual picture this week? It's one thing to see everything that's going on, but how does that have an impact on your everyday life as well? When we can bring in the greater vision, not just for the things right out there that we're trying to manifest, but everyday aspects, that's when we start to bring in a far bigger magic into our lives. That's when we can see just where we can branch out in the smaller steps that we may not have noticed up until the Sunday. When I look at the Knight of Arrows, when I look at this card, what I'm seeing is the hawk turning around and almost saying, are you ready? Yeah, really bringing that energy back to yourself and asking yourself that question. Am I ready? It's one thing to want these things. It's one thing to want change. It's one thing to feel as if, from a heart perspective, you know, we are so ready to take this opportunity, to take this jump. We've learned all that we need to learn. Constantly coming back to the mindset, am I ready? Am I in harmony? Am I in alignment? Because the other side of the Five of Stones, if we force, particularly the inner child here, if we force that side of us that doesn't feel ready to go and do something before it's ready, what happens is we don't trust ourselves. What happens then is the journey becomes one of endings and hardship and heartbreak, and whatever we feel no longer becomes our ability to see, but it's what we don't want to perceive because we don't listen to it. So the way that we see ourselves is from a perspective of not being able to do what we actually came here to do. It's not a very empowering situation, and it's one that the universe will say, I need to take you out of that one. Okay? Feeling into the body, feeling into it for the teacher that it is, feeling into the wisdom that comes forth when we can hone our own emotions. Checking, are we ready? Without the judgment, trusting the time will come. Like this morning, the time will come. It always has. You've always been ready for whatever you had. You've always been able to do whatever you've been able to do. You may not feel it at the time. Looking back, you've always managed it. Trusting your connection this week is really going to help, because then you recognize that the storm externally is a reflection of where you're at. So if we break that down with the major arcanas, we have the Death card, the High Priestess, the Tower, and the Hierophant. Whopping energies this week. We do have 4. 4 is stability. 4 can also be a box, remember. So whatever has given security. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there. what I'm hearing is, you know, when we point fingers and we say, well, this person hasn't done this, or this person hasn't done this work, or this person hasn't woke to this, or whatever. Have we? And this week, the major fates are going to give us the opportunity to look at that. Or have we become very comfortable in pointing externally rather than internally this week? Because there are things that need to come to an end. Our own ego included, our own limitations and restrictions included. So we can, all the time we're pointing outside at the storm outside, we're not facing what is going on within. And that, when we think of the death card, death doesn't have time for that. Change doesn't have time for that. It needs to keep moving. Okay, so this week, instead of pointing outwards, going within, seeing what's going on for us, because we have the wisdom of the High Priestess there that says, come on, there's things that need to be changed. In the Tower card, in the Blasted Oak, there's things here that no longer serve you, that have perhaps, on this card in particular, it reminds me of the Hanged Man finally being let free. You've seen this from enough different perspectives now, and let's bring this full circle. Again, it's going back to that we can feel certain things in situations and look at it from all different angles and learn from it and heal from it and gain this and gain that, but ultimately we must finish the circle. What have we learned? And there's a high chance we can come back around and go, oh yeah, I don't like this situation. Okay, so what's the bigger lesson here? Being okay to walk away from something that doesn't sustain you. Or whatever that may be, there's a big chunk of my own narrative there. So whatever you're learning this week as you come full circle, don't forget to put that into an action by doing something that's going to bring you harmony, bring you back into balance. Because the only way, with the ancestor, with the Hierophant, the only way we learn our wisdom is to apply it. Keep returning. You see here they've got a drum. Keep returning to our own beat, what brings us harmony, what brings us balance. Because it's that gives us structure. Obviously not getting too caught up in our own structure, being open to other views and other experiences also this week, so that we don't, there's a big difference between being grounded and limited. Being aware of that this week. So the remaining cards we have 1, 2, 1. Okay, so we have 3 sword cards, and one of them is the 3 of Swords. So it's almost like a double whammy of, I don't want to say heartbreak when we think, and it's funny that I don't want to say heartbreak. So there can be a real avoidance of necessary release and necessary separation this week, which I'm acutely aware of my own story there, but there can be an avoidance of that. And there is a double whammy opportunity here. And it is an opportunity. When our heart is open, it's an opportunity to see what is actually going on in there, what is actually burning, what is actually our desire behind it all. If we feel jealous, if we feel angry, if we feel frustrated, or whatever it is we feel in this heart, it's not about separating from the heart or separating from the self, but feeling that. And that can be uncomfortable. That can cause heartache. Remember, heartache is because the heart is aching for what it wants. So having the courage to see that from a different perspective, having the courage to feel into our ability to witness our own inner truth, for the higher perspective that it's going to bring, for the greater vision of ourselves that it's going to bring. I don't think things need to be additionally painful. I don't believe that it's no pain, no gain. I don't believe in that kind of energy. However, if we do disassociate from our feelings, they get louder. If we do separate from any discomfort, it becomes more painful. The body needs us to hear it. And this week, that's really going to come to light for the creative conduit that it is, because we have one card, and it's the Ace of Wands. It's the spark of life. Okay, so we have the breath of life and the spark of life. Our thoughts are what brings things to life. Our body is what mirrors it. And recognizing that communication this week, recognizing where certain parts of that may need to be stopped. Okay, where we may need to step up and take a bit more control of that. There is a bit of floofy energy. be okay with that, but have compassion with that. It's just our way of gently, gently, softly, softly feeling into things that may feel a bit more harsh than we would like. Myself, I have a couple of scenarios that are going on in my life at the moment, and I can see why there's certain things I haven't been doing, and I can see how this situation is going to kind of push me into doing them, you know, like a creative contraction. So being compassionate with the things that are coming to light, being aware and open to what it is you are seeing, even the floofiness, you know, gently, gently, softly, softly. There isn't any rush this week. It's, as you can see from the major arcanas, things are going to come to light anyway. But it's about recognizing, in order for things to change, we have to see our heart in a different way. We have to let it take the lead, to let it take control, to let it inform us of what is actually going on, to allow it to be the inner wisdom, the coherence that it always has. You know, there's a reason that the Ace of Arrows, the breath of life, is on the Uffington horse eye, to see through the wisdom of the heart. This week is going to be the spark of life that brings us almost back from the brink. Things are difficult out there, things are frustrating, you know, there are certain situations where we can almost feel as if nothing has moved forward, and we may have even gone backwards. However, that isn't possible. If you've learned everything that you've learned and you've endured, that endurance, everything that you've endured, the only belief that nothing has changed is coming from a restricted view of how you see yourself. We've all gone through so much. We've all learned so much. And this week, it is more about reconnecting to that wisdom and seeing ourselves from where we actually are, not from where we've been. Okay, so 36 minutes. It is slightly untangible this week, and that is to be expected from now until the middle of November. What I would suggest is maybe keeping a journal of certain things, just one word things from your dreams, or certain things that are coming up that may need your attention, because it's almost like a subtle whisper. Go beyond the obvious this week. Don't get distracted by your own illusions this week. Yeah, particularly stories that can feel comfortable so we don't have to face our own. So again, that's that pointing fingers energy. Try not to get caught up in it. If you do, have compassion. But yeah, when you have a moment, have a cup of tea and just feel into, why am I being a twat today? What am I feeling today? Why is that agitating me today? Because again, we have that Six of Vessels, that reunion, but also the Queen of Pentacles and the Endurance again. Yeah, the Queen of Pentacles and the Endurance again. And I want to show you these two, because the Endurance, the Five of Stones, we've already seen. And it's like we've already seen the hardships of that. Yeah, we've already been there. We've already recognised that. We've done so much towards that. But what we don't see is what's actually protecting the energy on the outside. The Queen of Stones, the Bear, the Queen of Pentacles. Okay, so recognising that all of these hardships, all of these endurances are an opportunity to nurture ourselves. If something feels difficult, if a situation doesn't feel right, come back in. As we go into the Hermit year, it's going to be down to us to evaluate when we need to be out in the limelight, when we need to come in, when we need to reflect, when we need to be externally concerned, and when we need to bring that attention inwards. This week, it's like a practice of that. It's a reunion of coming back to our physical body and coming back to our own light by recognizing that if something feels hard, it's an opportunity to come back in and tend to that younger energy that may not feel ready, or that may have forgotten that it's the mama bear, that it's here to protect, that it is connected to the earth, that it is abundant, that it is the feminine, that it only gets fierce when it feels as if it's under threat, by itself included. So this week, taking an opportunity to feel into whatever is going on. If it feels too difficult, step back, go within, nurture yourself, allow the changes which are already happening to happen. We can so often jump back into old patterns because we don't feel as if we're doing enough, or as if anything is changing. when in reality it's because we've lost sight of who we are, so we don't feel valued, or we don't feel valuable enough, and we don't have that self-worth. This week, find that harmony, find that balance, find your worth, not externally, internally, and come back to yourself as many times as it takes. See you next week.